Before we start the show, don't forget to check our new ebook, Kill All Bugs, Learn Software Testing in One Day. For a limited time, it's only $9.99. Links in description.
Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show that cuts through the noise and delivers those vital insights you need to stay truly well-informed. Today, we're diving headfirst into a term that's just ubiquitous in the tech world and beyond: Agile. You hear it everywhere. Job descriptions, project meetings, maybe even buzzword bingo sometimes. But, for an idea that's so widely discussed, why does it sometimes remain so elusive, so often misunderstood in practice? That's really our mission today. We want to go beyond the textbook definitions to unpack those aha moments that will genuinely deepen your understanding.
And that's exactly the kind of deep dive we need, I think. It's one thing to know what Agile practices are, but the real power, it comes from understanding the why behind them. Our sources for this exploration: a collection of Agile testing interview questions. Now, these aren't just trivia. They're actually incredibly potent guideposts. They sort of naturally steer us toward the most critical concepts, allowing us to really unravel the subject comprehensively.
Absolutely. Think of these questions as like the X-ray vision we're using to peer into the heart of Agile. Today, we're going to use them to unlock key aspects of Agile methodology and testing, guiding you through the most impactful nuggets of knowledge to give you clarity and confidence. Let's maybe start with a scenario many of us can relate to. Okay, imagine you're a tester, or really, anyone working on a project, right? And the requirements for what you're building are constantly shifting. It's not exactly a rare occurrence in today's fast-paced world, is it? One day a feature needs to do X, the next it's X and Y, maybe Z too. So when those requirements are a moving target, what should your approach be? How do you maintain sanity, let alone quality?
Yeah, this is where the Agile mindset truly shines, especially, I think, for testers. The traditional approach might be to, fight against the changes, dig your heels in. But Agile really embraces them. What's truly insightful here, from our sources, is the need to write more generic test plans and cases, ones that capture the intent of the requirement. Don't get too bogged down in the exact specifics that are, frankly, likely to change. This builds in flexibility right from the start. Crucially, it means forging a very tight collaboration with product owners, business analysts.
Right. Constant dialogue.
Exactly. You need to be talking constantly to understand the scope and impact of changes as they emerge, not, after they're already set in stone.
So it's less about resisting change, more about embedding adaptability into your DNA almost. But how do you prevent that constant churn from just, derailing the entire sprint or even the whole project?
It's a delicate balance. Beyond just collaboration, it's vital to make sure the entire team, especially stakeholders, understands the inherent risks of late-stage changes. Transparency is absolutely key. On a practical level, if you're thinking about test automation, a smart move is often to delay it until the feature and its requirements stabilize a bit. Automating against a moving target is just, it's a recipe for wasted effort.
Makes sense.
And for those minor, inevitable tweaks, sometimes the most agile thing you can do is negotiate. Maybe defer them to the next sprint, rather than disrupting the current one and impacting the team's focus. It's all about that strategic flexibility.
That's a crucial point. Knowing when to hold steady and when to adapt, which I guess brings us squarely to a fundamental choice in testing: exploratory versus scripted testing. They sound like two sides of a coin. How do these approaches stack up, and maybe more importantly, when do you really lean on one over the other?
They absolutely are complementary, not mutually exclusive at all. Exploratory testing is, it's fantastic when flexibility is paramount. Its key advantage requires minimal upfront prep. This makes it incredibly easy to adapt when requirements are in flux, and it thrives, really, in environments with scarce documentation. You're effectively learning, designing tests, and executing them almost simultaneously.
Okay, I see the appeal, but what's the downside?
The challenge, though, is that it can sometimes be difficult to present clear, quantifiable progress and coverage metrics. To project management, who might be looking for those hard numbers.
Right. Stakeholders often want that checklist, don't they? Are we done testing X? So where does scripted testing fit in?
Scripted testing is almost the inverse in some ways. It's major strength. Situations demanding strict adherence and repeatability. Think legal, compliance, regulatory requirements. Every step is documented, every outcome predictable. However, the preparation is often pretty time-consuming. And that rigidity means you're repeatedly testing the exact same steps, which can be inefficient for finding new bugs. Plus, it makes it notoriously difficult and costly to modify when, as we know happens so often in Agile, requirements change.
So it's brittle in a way.
Exactly. The real insight here, I think, is that neither is inherently better. A truly effective Agile team understands these trade-offs. They intelligently apply the right approach for the specific context and, importantly, the risk profile.
That's a great example of choosing the right tool for the job. Okay, let's unpack some foundational Agile terminology. We hear epic, user stories, tasks. They certainly sound like a hierarchy, but how do they actually fit together? And why does this structure matter for, well, for everyone involved?
You're right. It's a critical hierarchy. It brings clarity to complexity. So at the highest level, you've got an epic. An epic represents a very large, often custom-described software feature. Think of it as a significant chunk of value, like implement a new customer onboarding flow. It's itemized in the product backlog, but it's generally way too big to be completed in just one sprint.
Okay, so an epic is the grand vision, the major goal. What breaks that down then?
Below an epic, you have user stories. These are much smaller, client-centric descriptions of functionality, often phrased like, as a type of user, I want some goal, so that's some reason. They define specific project or business functions to be delivered, ideally within a single sprint. So for our onboarding epic, a story might be, as a new user, I want to be able to register with my email and password. They're kind of the atomic units of value from the user's perspective.
Got it. Epic, then story, and tasks.
Right. And then for the development team, user stories are further broken down into even smaller, actionable tasks. These are the specific pieces of work needed to actually complete that story. Things like develop registration UI or create API endpoint for user signup. This clear flow from epic down to story down to task is vital for managing scope and making sure everyone understands the immediate goal in relation to the bigger picture.
And speaking of maintaining quality within that structure, another technical sounding term that's absolutely crucial is refactoring. What exactly is it, and why is it so important in an environment where speed and constant change are, well, the norm?
Refactoring, yes.
Yeah.
It's the process of modifying existing code to improve its internal structure, its readability, maybe its performance, without changing its external behavior or functionality. The code still does exactly what it did before, but hopefully it does it better internally. Cleaner, simpler. What's truly insightful here and often missed is that refactoring isn't a luxury. It's not some technical chore you do only if you have spare time.
It's proactive.
Exactly. It's a proactive, strategic investment. It's actively paying down technical debt. In Agile, where new features are constantly being added and code bases evolve rapidly, refactoring prevents that code base from becoming a tangled, unmanageable mess. It's like that old analogy of sharpening your saw, right? You take a moment to improve your tools so you can cut faster and more effectively later on. It ensures that frequent deliveries are actually sustainable and don't just lead to a fragile, bug-ridden system down the line.
That's a powerful analogy. Proactive maintenance actually accelerating future development. Okay, let's zoom out a bit now. Agile isn't this single monolithic entity. There are different flavors, different frameworks. Two prominent ones are Scrum and Extreme Programming, or XP. What are the key distinctions? What sets them apart?
Yeah, this is a classic point of comparison, and it's good to understand the differences. Scrum is probably the most widely adopted Agile framework out there. It typically operates in iterations called sprints, usually lasting somewhere between 2 weeks and a month. A defining characteristic is that Scrum generally does not allow new changes to be introduced into a sprint once it's kicked off. The scope is locked for that period. The product owner prioritizes the overall product backlog, but the development team gets autonomy in deciding the sequence of work within that sprint. And interestingly, Scrum is quite process-focused. It doesn't explicitly prescribe specific engineering practices.
Okay, so Scrum is about the how we work together process, and XP, how does that differentiate itself?
Extreme programming, XP, well, as the name kind of suggests, takes some Agile principles to a more extreme level. Its iterations are generally shorter, maybe 1 to 2 weeks typically. XP is also known for being a bit more flexible with changes within an iteration, even after it's started, though this obviously requires very, very tight communication. The customer plays a highly active, often daily, role in XP, strictly prioritizing features. But the biggest differentiator, I'd say, is that XP does explicitly prescribe strong engineering practices. Things like test-driven development, TDD, which you might talk about, pair programming, continuous integration.
So XP gets into the how the code gets written part too.
Exactly. So while Scrum provides a framework for managing the work, XP also dictates, to a degree, how that work is actually engineered.
That distinction between process framework and prescribed engineering practices is really clear. This leads us, naturally, I think, to a common source of confusion. The difference between Scrum and Agile itself. Are they interchangeable terms? Or is there a more nuanced relationship?
That's an excellent question, and it's really vital to clarify. They are definitely not interchangeable, no. Think of Agile as the overarching philosophy, the mindset, the set of principles articulated back in the Agile Manifesto. It's the big umbrella that champions things like iterative development, customer collaboration, responding to change over following a plan, delivering working software frequently. Under this philosophy, each iteration involves a full development, cycle planning, design, coding, testing, showing it to stakeholders.
So Agile is the why and the what we value.
Precisely. And Scrum is one of the most popular frameworks or processes that allows you to actually implement those Agile principles. Within Scrum, the sprint is the basic unit of development. It comes with specific roles like Scrum Master and Product Owner, specific ceremonies like daily stand-ups, sprint planning, sprint reviews, things like that. So yeah, in the simplest terms, Agile is the practice, the guiding philosophy, and Scrum is a highly structured, specific process for effectively following that practice.
Okay, that brings a lot of clarity. Agile, the philosophy, Scrum, a way to do it. Got it. Now, building on iterations, there's also a difference sometimes mentioned between iterative and incremental development. These sound really similar, but what's the core distinction?
Yeah, these terms are often used together, and they overlap, but they describe slightly different aspects of development. Iterative development really focuses on repetition and refinement. You go through development cycles, sprints, releases, repeating the process, making the product better each time until the final product meets all the requirements. Think of it like sculpting, maybe. You keep shaping and refining the whole piece until it's just right. So release 1 might involve sprint 1, then sprint 2 to refine that work, and so on.
Okay, refining the whole thing over time. And incremental.
Incremental development, on the other hand, is more about delivering value in distinct, usable portions or chunks. You basically segregate the system's overall functionality into smaller, independent segments or increments. Each segment is then fully delivered, through all the stages, requirements to deployment, as a self-contained piece of value. So instead of refining the whole system repeatedly, you build a complete working piece, then you build another complete working piece until the full system is assembled. Many successful Agile projects in reality are both iterative, refining within each increment, and incremental, delivering those usable pieces over time. The key insight is you're building it piece by piece and making each piece better as you go.
That really brings the nuances to life. Building and refining, piece by piece. Agile also seems to have some specialized sprints or stories for specific purposes, like spikes and sprint 0. They sound like specific tools for specific problems. What are these and why are they used?
You're right, they're definitely strategic tools for managing unknowns or getting started. Sprint 0 is typically an initial, often short sprint. It takes place right at the very beginning of a project, before the real development sprints begin. Its purpose is purely foundational activities, research, setup, preparation, things like configuring the development environment, setting up crucial tools, maybe building out the initial product backlog. It's all about laying a solid groundwork so that the subsequent sprints can hit the ground running smoothly.
Right, getting all your ducks in a row before the actual race starts. Makes sense. And spikes, what are those?
Spikes are a fascinating concept, actually. They are essentially user stories, but they're specifically dedicated to research, exploration, design, or prototyping, not delivering end-user functionality directly. You use them when the team hits a technical hurdle or a design problem that requires some investigation before you can confidently commit to a full-blown development effort for a related feature. Spikes help mitigate risk. They help gain clarity. They often happen between regular sprints or maybe as a short time box story within a sprint. They can be technical, like let's research this new database technology, or functional, like let's prototype this complex user interaction to see if it works. The brilliance of spikes is they sort of formalize the learning process. They ensure research isn't just some ad hoc thing, but a planned, valued part of the development cycle itself.
That makes perfect sense for tackling uncertainty up front. Very practical. Now let's talk about how development itself is approached. Test-driven development, or TDD, is a powerful concept that often generates, well, quite a bit of discussion. What's the core idea here, and why is it considered so impactful?
Test-driven development, TDD, yeah, it kind of flips the traditional development process on its head.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly powerful when done well. The core idea is surprisingly simple. You write your tests before you write your production code. So the developer first writes a very specific automated test case for a new piece of functionality, or maybe a bug fix. That test, by definition, will initially fail. It'll be red because the code doesn't exist yet or the bug is still there. Then, and only then, the developer writes the absolute minimum amount of production code needed just to make that specific test pass. Get it to green. Once it passes, the final step is to refactor. Clean up the code, improve its design and structure, all while making sure the tests still pass. Keep it green. This red-green refactor cycle creates this ironclad safety net. It ensures every piece of code has an accompanying test, which generally leads to significantly higher code quality and fewer bugs downstream.
So the tests aren't just an afterthought bolted on at the end. They literally drive the development process, building quality in from the absolute start. And speaking of keeping things stable in this fast-paced, agile environment, continuous integration, CI, seems vital. Why is that so important?
Oh, continuous integration CI is absolutely non-negotiable for high-performing Agile teams. Its importance really lies in maintaining a stable, high-quality code base amidst all those frequent changes. First, by automatically building and testing the code every single time a developer commits changes, CI helps detect bugs or integration errors really early, often within minutes. This prevents small problems from snowballing into massive, hard-to-diagnose issues later on. Saves huge amounts of time and effort.
Catches things quickly.
Exactly. And given that Agile aims for frequent code deliveries, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, CI ensures that every build is potentially stable and of release quality. It also continuously checks the impact of work being done on different feature branches against the main code base. It automatically merges and validates, preventing those integration nightmares you sometimes hear about. Honestly, it's the backbone of a high-performing Agile team. It enables speed without sacrificing quality.
That really underscores how these practices build on each other, creating a more robust system overall. Okay, shifting gears slightly from processes to the people who make it all happen. What defines a good Agile tester? What sort of quality should they possess to truly thrive in this dynamic environment?
An effective Agile tester. It's definitely not just about the technical testing skills, though those are important. It's really a blend of adaptability, curiosity, and, crucially, communication. They need a quick understanding of requirements, which, as we've said, are often fluid, and a deep grasp of core Agile principles and concepts. Critically, they must be adept at understanding the risks associated with changing requirements. And they need strong prioritization skills based on those evolving needs. But perhaps most importantly, they commit to continuous proactive communication. They're not just sitting there waiting for instructions. They're actively engaging with business associates, with developers, with other testers, constantly to ensure shared understanding and prevent issues before they even arise. It's a very collaborative, almost investigative problem-solving role.
That makes sense. Less about finding bugs at the very end and much more about preventing them throughout the process. And who are the key leadership roles within an Agile team? I mean, who's guiding the ship and keeping everything on course, broadly speaking?
Right. While Agile emphasizes self-organizing teams, there are definitely key leadership roles that facilitate things. The Scrum Master, for instance, in Scrum, they're really a servant leader. Their job is to facilitate the Scrum process, help the team remove impediments, resolve conflicts, shield the team from external distractions. They're essentially the team's coach and process guardian. The development manager, on the other hand, often focuses more on the people aspect, hiring, mentoring, developing the individual skills of team members, making sure they have the resources and growth opportunities they need to excel. Their focus is more on capability building.
Okay, different kinds of support for the team. Now, how do Agile teams actually track their progress? We often hear about visual tools like burn up and burn down charts, and also the concept of velocity. How do these work together to give a clear picture of where things stand?
Yeah, these are essential metrics for transparency and forecasting. Let's start with velocity. Velocity is a metric calculated by summing up the effort estimates, usually in story points, sometimes ideal days, for all the user stories that were fully completed within a single iteration or sprint. Over time, it tells a team, roughly, how much work they can realistically chew through in a typical sprint, and this becomes a powerful tool for estimating how long the whole project might take. Now, while the calculation itself is straightforward, the real challenge, and where teams often trip up, is in its interpretation and use. Velocity is a team metric. It reflects the team's capacity, not an individual's, and is notoriously easy to game or misapply if management isn't careful. The true insight isn't just the number itself, but how consistently the team can maintain and understand that pace, and more importantly, how it's used for forecasting future work, not for comparing teams or judging performance directly.
That's a really critical distinction to make. Use it for planning, not punishment. Okay, so velocity helps them understand their pace. What about the visual charts? The burn up and burn down.
All right, the charts provide that visual story. The burn-up chart tracks the progress of stories done over time. You typically see a line rising, showing how much value or how many story points have been accumulated toward the overall goal or release. The burn down chart, conversely, shows how much work was left to do over time within a specific sprint or release. You see a line trending downwards towards zero, hopefully, highlighting the remaining work that needs to be completed before the time box the sprint end date runs out. What's truly fascinating and connects back to velocity is how maintaining a consistent iteration length throughout a project is so crucial. It creates a stable rhythm, a predictable cadence. This allows for much more objective measurement of progress and provides that consistent baseline for measuring team velocity, which in turn leads to far more accurate forecasting and planning.
Consistency is key for measurement.
Got it. Okay, it sounds like Agile is a powerful framework, really effective in the right context. But, as you hinted, it's not a magical solution for every single problem, right? There must be situations where Agile just isn't the best fit. What are those critical questions you should ask before jumping onto the Agile bandwagon?
You're absolutely spot on. Agile is incredibly effective when applied appropriately, but forcing it where it doesn't fit, that can be disastrous. It's definitely not a silver bullet. Before fully embracing Agile for a project, there are probably 5 critical questions based on our sources that you really need to ask honestly. First, is the functionality genuinely splittable? Can your product or project be broken down into small, independent, valuable, shippable increments? If not, Agile's iterative nature struggles. Second, is the customer truly available and engaged? Agile relies heavily on continuous feedback and collaboration. An absent or disengaged customer is a major red flag.
Right, that feedback loop is essential. Absolutely. Third, are the requirements flexible or expected to evolve? If requirements are rigidly defined, completely fixed, and immutable from day one, much of Agile's core strength adaptability is essentially wasted. Fourth, is the project genuinely time-constrained, needing rapid delivery? Agile thrives on those short, fixed-length iterations driving towards delivery. And finally, fifth, is the team skilled and empowered enough? Agile demands a high level of self-organization, cross-functional skills, and collaboration. The team needs the ability and the authority to make decisions. If the answers to these questions lean away from the Agile ideal, say you have a huge monolithic project with rigid requirements and an unavailable customer, then pushing an Agile approach might actually cause more problems than it solves. You might be better off with a different methodology.
That's a brilliant practical checklist for anyone evaluating the right methodology for their situation. Really useful. Finally, just briefly, for those who might appreciate a hybrid approach or work in certain environments, what exactly is Scrumban, and why might a team consider using that?
Scrumban. It's a really interesting hybrid model, actually. It cleverly blends elements from both Scrum and Kanban. It's particularly well-suited, brilliantly so sometimes, for projects that involve frequent maintenance or teams that constantly encounter unexpected user stories or urgent bug fixes popping up. Think support teams or teams managing mature products, or maybe teams battling a high rate of programming errors they need to address quickly. The goal of Scrumban is essentially to bring the structure and predictability, the rhythm of Scrum's iterations and roles, while also leveraging Kanban's strong focus on continuous flow, limiting work in progress, WIP, and optimizing for the minimum completion time for each individual work item. So if you're in a very dynamic, maybe support-heavy environment, constantly getting hit with unexpected but important work, Scrumban offers a practical, flexible solution that kind of combines the best of both worlds.
Wow, what a truly illuminating deep dive today. We've really gone far beyond just the basic definitions, haven't we? Uncovering the underlying why and the nuanced applications of Agile. From understanding how to navigate those constantly changing requirements, making smart choices between exploratory and scripted testing, clearly defining the hierarchy of epics, stories, and tasks. We've explored the distinctions between Scrum and XP, clarified Agile's overarching philosophy, and even delved into tracking progress with velocity and burn charts, right down to understanding when Agile might not be the best fit. I feel like you, listening, now have a much more comprehensive and genuinely insightful understanding of Agile's core principles and practices.
Indeed. I think we've really explored how Agile fundamentally emphasizes adaptability, clear communication, and that continuous feedback loop as keys to navigating complexity and delivering value. So maybe here's a final thought for you to consider. In what area of your own work, or perhaps even your personal life or projects, could applying just a brief deep dive into an ambiguous requirement you're facing, or maybe adopting a short focus iteration to tackle a personal goal, help you manage change more effectively, or perhaps improve the quality of what you're doing?
That's a fantastic practical challenge to leave you with. Think about those principles: adaptability, iteration, feedback, how you might apply them even in small ways, and how they could potentially transform your own projects and your approach to problem solving. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Hey yo, haven't you checked out our new book yet? Link in description.